Hello, I'm Archie Luxury. Welcome to the program Fuckaroonies. Hello, fuckers. And today I'd like to talk about luxury wristwatches and evolving trends. And this particularly relates to servicing luxury wristwatches. And I gotta tell you, there's a huge industry change. In the 1950s, 60s, if you were a independent watchmaker, watch companies like Breguet, Vacheron, Rolex, Omega, they would supply parts to people in the trade. Now, actually, let me even say that further. Rolex encouraged independent watchmakers by giving them a set of spanners, tools, to open the Rolex range. So what a cool thing that was happening, because in the time Rolex's logic was, if an independent watchmaker can open it up and service it, that watch is more likely to get sales because it's able to be repaired and serviced, etc. Now the whole business model has changed. See, what's happened now is that companies like Rolex, and it's not just Rolex, it's the high-end makers like Patek, Vacheron, Breguet, Jaeger-LeCoultre, they no longer will supply independents with the parts. And this is a very, very interesting development. So what sort of happened is, companies like Rolex say that, we want to keep it all internally. That means that we do the servicing on pieces. Now that sounds all nice and proper, but fuck, what that means is that they've discovered a new cash cow to gouge you dumb fuckers over. And it's really quite nasty. Let me tell you the story. I live in Brisbane town, Australia, and this is something that a watchmaker told me. Many years ago, Hardy Brothers had the agency for Rolex. The reason they lost it was because they refused to send watches back to Rolex for service. They had their own in-house watchmakers who they wanted to use to do the servicing, and Rolex said, no, we want to do it internally. And sure enough, they got the fucking ass. That's right, fuckers, they got the ass. They lost the license to print money. So this is an interesting development. And what's happening is that if you own any high-end wristwatches, and I've discovered this, I bought a what is it? It's a late 90s Audemars Piguet, reasonable watch, nice watch. It needed a service. I sent it to my watchmaker. He can't complete the service because it needs a few replacement parts. He can't access those parts. So what the fuck do you do? And let me tell you this, my Breguet, it had a slight little problem. It's already been fully overhauled. It had a slight problem where the minute, when the chronograph's running, the minute recorder, it stopped. It's not doing it properly. Again, it needs a part he doesn't have access to. It's a Lemania based movement, but he doesn't have access to those spares. So what do? See, independent watchmakers, they need the parts. I mean, you can send it to an independent for a full service, but if he can't get the parts, what's he supposed to fucking do? He can't make these fucking things by hand. That's cost prohibitive, and it may not be, you don't want to start doing that. But this is the thing, it's like buying a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW or an Audi and only being able to take it back to Audi or BMW or Mercedes-Benz for a service. You're fucked over big time, and this is what's happening with the high-end luxury watches. how do you get the parts? How do you get this shit? So these manufacturers, they're trying to keep that for themselves, and their prices aren't cheap. Their prices are not cheap, and they see it as a huge cash cow. And I got to tell you, you know, the modern business model, the car market in Australia is very competitive. Mind you, we're fucking raped compared to you Americans. But they're not making the money out of selling the car. It's the service and upkeep, the servicing. That's where they make the money from. And it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting indeed. And I don't know what you do. What do you do if you've got a beautiful watch? How do you get the parts? I mean, for example, you send a Breitling into Breitling for service. They replace the hands every service. Now, if you've got a Breitling and you send it to an independent, he hasn't got access to new hands. And although some of the Breitlings are Valjoux 7750 based movements, they're ETA based movements, they're still, you know, you want to be very reluctant about what parts you change in for just generic ETA parts. The Breguet ones seem to be a little bit, the Breitling ones seem to be a little bit different, a little bit finishing different. So you don't want to swap bits and pieces over willy-nilly. You want to very reluctantly do that. And this is the whole thing. What the fuck do you do? Watches, I gotta tell you, the manufacturers, they're trying to keep it to their chest all internally. And it's pretty fucked. I mean, seriously. If you've got to send it back to them for servicing, it becomes cost prohibitive. Rolex has had such huge market share and such huge sales that there's a lot of parts out there, okay? There's a lot of parts out there in the world. But that's not to say that that's going to be like that for a long time. Parts are getting harder. Rolex is not giving you tools anymore. They're not giving what they're saying. Bring it back. Every agency who has a Rolex dealership, any repairs must go back to Rolex. You will lose your dealership if you start doing independent services in-house. They will fucking hit the roof. You will lose your license to print money. And that's the whole thing. This is a changing world. And if it was any other industry, there'd be fucking protests. Could you imagine buying a GM car and only being able to take it back to GM to get a service? There'd be fucking outrage. There'd be consumer laws and that's price fixing and that's wrong and blah blah blah. Well, fuckers, that's the way it's looking. That's very much the way it's looking with the watch industry there. The makers, they want to keep a rein on servicing, and that's going to make it very expensive. It's not going to be cheap. You send something back to these fuckers and you'll soon get a second or a third asshole. So I'd like to hear what everyone thinks about this, and very interesting, fuckers. This is the development. Maybe it's time to stop collecting. Maybe this is the nail in the collector's coffin. I'd like to hear from the audience. I'm Archie Luxury. Tell me what you fuckers think of that.